All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're decoding a fascinating and, frankly, kind of alarming reality hiding right in plain sight inside our financial and healthcare systems. We're going to look closely at how two incredibly common, culturally celebrated financial wins, things your parents, your friends, and the media probably told you to strive for, are actually highly effective liquidity traps. These are structural mechanisms designed by massive institutions to extract your wealth by draining your accessible cash.
You know the story of the Titanic, right? Well, the massive loss of life wasn't just about hitting an iceberg. The ship's designers deliberately hid the lack of lifeboats just to make the first-class decks look more spacious and beautiful. They were selling a total illusion of safety. And the material we're looking at today argues that modern financial and healthcare industries do the exact same thing. They hide massive structural flaws right behind beautiful showrooms, friendly tellers, and seemingly free price tags. So, you gotta ask yourself, what do a completely paid-off house and a quote-unquote free healthcare plan actually have in common? I know it sounds totally backwards to everything traditional media tells us, but aggressively paying off your mortgage and signing up for a zero-premium Medicare plan, they share the exact same catastrophic hidden risk. They both convince you to trade your liquid, highly flexible cash for a rigid, inflexible asset right before a crisis hits. To put this into perspective, let's look at 1989 Japan. Citizens there poured absolutely every spare yen into paying down their homes, completely convinced that real estate only goes up and debt is this terrible sin. But when the housing bubble violently burst, millions watched their net worth just evaporate. They were functionally trapped. Why? Because they had zero liquid cash. Their wealth was locked inside the walls of their homes, totally inaccessible when they actually needed it to survive the crash. Okay, moving into trap one, the mortgage illusion. Let's see how the culturally celebrated goal of paying off your mortgage early is actually playing right into the bank's hands. I want you to think of your home equity like a drywall anchor. You push it into the living room wall, it goes in smooth, and it feels incredibly solid, right? But what if a pipe bursts and you suddenly need to pull that anchor back out in a total panic? It doesn't just slip out. It rips a massive, jagged hole in your wall and leaves a complete mess. The source material points out that home equity operates on the exact same mechanical principle. It feels secure, but if you lose your job or face a medical crisis, you can't buy groceries with a drywall anchor. Pulling that money back out when you're desperate destroys your financial stability, often forcing you to beg the very same bank for a terrible, high-interest desperation loan just to keep your head above water. Let's look at the math here. Take Arthur. He's 50, he hates debt, and he has a standard 30-year mortgage at a 3% fixed rate. To get that psychological relief of a paid-off house, he aggressively doubles his monthly payments. Now, avoiding a 3% interest charge is mathematically identical to earning a 3% return. But Arthur is totally ignoring the alternative. He could have taken those exact same extra payments and put them into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund, which historically averages roughly an 8% annual return over long periods. And the result? Because Arthur chose emotional comfort over the mathematical reality of a 5% compounded spread, he lost a brutal $150,000 in pure opportunity cost over a couple of decades. It's a staggering number, and he didn't lose this money in a scam or a market crash. He literally volunteered the most powerful compounding years of his life to a bank that was absolutely thrilled to take his cheap money. Which brings us to something absolutely crucial, the hidden power of inflation. Look, with a fixed 30-year mortgage, your payment is locked in forever, right? But the purchasing power of your currency shrinks every single year. This means your fixed debt actually gets cheaper and cheaper to service over time because you're repaying the bank with tomorrow's depreciated dollars. By rushing to pay off the house early, Arthur interrupted the beautiful, natural process of inflation just eating away at the true cost of his debt. All right, shifting gears to trap 2, the healthcare illusion. This is that second major liquidity trap you see marketed relentlessly on TV to anyone turning 65. The zero-premium Medicare Advantage plan. Just like the drywall anchor, we've got another perfect metaphor from the source material here, the paper umbrella. A zero-premium healthcare plan is exactly that. If you take it out in a light spring drizzle, a routine checkup, a teeth cleaning, maybe a free gym membership, it works beautifully and costs you nothing. But a real health crisis, that is not a drizzle. That is a Category 5 hurricane. And the moment the heavy rain starts falling, like an aggressive cancer diagnosis, that paper umbrella completely dissolves, leaving you totally exposed. Take 66-year-old Linda, who was diagnosed with a rare breast cancer while on one of these plans. Her reality was a nightmare. Her HMO trapped her in a narrow network, explicitly denying her access to an out-of-network specialized cancer center. When she settled for local care, her insurer threw up endless bureaucratic hurdles, things like prior authorizations and step therapy, tactics deliberately designed to frustrate patients into just giving up on expensive care. And the chronic financial stress of all this? Studies in the material show it imposes a cognitive load equivalent to dropping a patient's IQ by 13 points, right when they're fighting for their life.
Then the brutal math kicks in, exactly when you're most vulnerable. Because Linda had an Advantage plan, she was on the hook to pay a percentage of her expensive treatments until she hit her in-network out-of-pocket maximum, which for many of these plans is up to $8,850. So right when she needs to be resting and recovering, she is forced to rapidly drain liquid cash from her retirement to cover this massive unexpected bill. And oh, it gets worse. Healthcare deductibles reset every single January 1st. Because Linda's battle with cancer crossed over into a new calendar year, boom, she gets hit with that $8,850 all over again. Her 2-year battle drained nearly $18,000 in liquid cash from her retirement accounts. If the stock market happened to be down 20% that year, Linda would be forced to sell her investments at a loss, a trap known as sequence of returns risk, locking in permanent portfolio damage just to survive. The source material makes a really stark point here. This isn't an accident, it's a structural incentive. Private insurers receive a fixed monthly amount from the government per patient. If they spend less on your care, they keep the difference. It brilliantly illustrates the dark corporate math at play. The business model is inherently incentivized to deny claims, enforce narrow networks, and maximize shareholder profit, directly at the expense of paying out for medically necessary, life-saving care. So, what does this all mean for us? Let's move to our final section, the solution, the bridge to freedom. Here's how we actually stop trading our flexibility for drywall anchors and paper umbrellas and start building real, resilient wealth. It's all about reclaiming your walk-away power. The material outlines 3 clear steps for this. First, calculate your personal interest rate spread. If your mortgage rate is drastically lower than market returns, stretch that cheap debt out. Simultaneously, ruthlessly audit your healthcare benefits so you know your exact out-of-pocket maximums. Second, stop sending those extra principal payments to the bank and instead build a liquid cash bridge bucket. And third, take that freed up cash flow and systematically invest it into broadly diversified index funds. Let's zoom in on that bridge bucket for a second, because this is absolutely crucial. This is your massive liquid cash reserve, held in something incredibly safe like a high-yield savings account or short-term treasury bills. It is your ultimate financial shock absorber. If the market crashes or the paper umbrella of your healthcare plan tears, you use this cash. It protects you against that dreaded sequence of returns risk because you never have to sell investments at a loss, and it guarantees you never have to go back to a bank begging for a high-interest desperation loan. By keeping your capital compounding and, most importantly, easily accessible, you eventually hit what the author calls the inversion point. That's the magical moment where your money starts producing more wealth than your actual physical labor does. It just goes to show that steady, unglamorous, highly liquid, quote-unquote lazy investing will always beat fleeting trends or locking all your cash inside the drywall of your living room. I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. The illusion of safety is often the most expensive thing you can buy. Look at your own financial and healthcare portfolio today. Ask yourself, are the decisions you consider safe, like rushing to pay off a 3% mortgage or grabbing a zero-premium healthcare plan, actually building liquid walk-away power? Or are you just decorating a financial cage? Keep your cash liquid, respect the terrifying math of opportunity cost, and always plan for the hurricane, not just the drizzle.